welcome back to the B35 Pro build. I'm Abnormal FPV. Last time we soldered the ESC motors and battery leads and capacitor. Now we're going to work on the receiver and the video transmitter. So I've got the receiver out. First things first is to tin up the pads. Make sure that you've got the pinouts for whatever you're putting on the flight controller. You got to make sure it's all the same. I didn't get a really good picture from Radiomaster, but here's the thing. As long as you pay attention to what wire goes where, and you know where it's supposed to go, you can match that up. So I just put the green and the white wires on whichever pad I wanted, and I'll make sure that I put those on the correct TX and RX pads on the UART on the flight controller. So here's the SpeedyBee website. You go to speedybee.com/download and you can get the manuals for their products here. So I need the flight controller manual, so let's get that, and the frame manual, which is not what I'm showing here. That is for the pre-built bind and fly drone. So let's grab the stack manual here, and let's move back and get the frame manual. The frame manual is pretty limited, just to be clear. So if you want to go through the whole set of instructions and figure it out yourself, by all means, but this is a pretty simple frame. I think you can figure it out. So there's the frame. Let's grab the manual and get rid of this other junk I didn't need to open. I can't say it enough. Get the pinouts, please. You don't need to go asking someone when the manufacturer tells you. You know, if there's a problem, you could probably figure it out with the pinout. So here is what I'm looking for, is the flight controller's pinouts. And I mean, you can read it on the flight controller, but here's one for the ELRS receiver, which I'm going to install. It's going to be on UART 2, so receive and transmit pads that go to the second UART on this flight controller. That's what I need. And then we'll also need the video transmitter information, the pinout, for the O3 Air Unit. Should be the same for the O4. Here's the Air Unit. We'll put that on UART 1, just like they, show in the manual. Not going to make it any harder than it needs to be. So we're going to do a little modification to this, but I'll show you when we get there. So anyway, we've got the receiver antenna on, the shrink wrap on. Let's solder it onto UART 2. I left the wires completely, untrimmed because I didn't know how much room I'm going to have where this receiver is actually going to need to be fit. And frankly, it's all closed up inside this frame. So I'm just going to put a little piece of tape on it, make sure the wires don't come out of the frame, and it'll be fine. Alright, and as always, once you're done soldering, do a continuity check. Alright, let's do the O3 Air Unit now. Here it is. I'm going to trim the connector off the end because we're going to direct solder it to the pads. So no need for that. The next thing I'm going to do here is take the S-bus wire that's used to control the drone through the Air Unit using the DJI RC controller. And I trimmed it and I folded it over and shrink tubed it. Now I'm going to shrink tube it again to the ground wire that's right next to it because I'm not going to use it and it could cause problems when you have another receiver wired up. So instead of causing more problems, I'm just going to leave it off. It's not going to affect anything. So I'm going to pop the cover and take the connector out, and later I'll have to remove the antenna, but we're not worried about that right now. So here's the connector and the wiring harness, and as I said, I'm shrink tubing the S-bus to the ground wire. Let's get this soldering done. There's a lot of wires on this, on the HD wiring harnesses, so again, the pin out, make sure you're looking at the pin out, make sure you're soldering to the correct pads, okay? No one likes to be super frustrated doing this, and it's okay if you make a mistake, but you gotta realize it before you power everything up and potentially fry something. So it's better just to triple check before you start, you know, soldering onto the flight controller, and as long as you do that, you should be good to go. So again, we'll run a continuity check. You're basically just testing against the ground, and you're testing against adjacent joints to make sure you don't have any bridges or shorts. In here, I've already removed the electronics from the frame and cleaned them with alcohol, and we're going to go ahead and conformal coat it, because why not? You know, it's already here, it's ready to be coated, and it's not built yet, so this is a perfect opportunity to do some conformal coating. Make sure that you clean the board with alcohol. Scrub all the flux off, or as much as you can if you can't get all of it. But clean it, clean it, clean it. Now we're going to take out the silicone grommets because they kind of get crispy when you cover them with conformal coating. It ruins the grommets a little bit, you know, not immediately, but anyway. Now using the Loctite blue tack, I'm going to cover everything I do not want conformal coating in. Connectors, the barometer, that's what I was just showing you. There's a little rectangle with a hole in it, or you could look up what the barometer looks like on your flight controller and make sure you cover that, because if you get conformal coating in there, it will not work. And last but not least, the USB. You can just plug a USB in, you can plug connectors in and coat around that, but I didn't want, you know, to do that, so I used the blue tack. So here we go, we're going to paint each side and use the UV flashlight to make sure we covered everything. It's okay if you don't cover it all the first time, because we're going to do 2 coats. And I recommend you do 2 coats as well. The cool thing about this conformal coating is it's pretty much dry and able to be handled within several minutes after applying it. So I'm not waiting that long in between coats here. As soon as it's dry enough to handle, I'll just start doing this, you know, the second coat, or flipping it over and doing the, you know, the first coat on the back side, or whatever, you know, works for what you're doing. But make sure you cover everything that's exposed, and it really does help with shorts. I haven't had any issues since I've been doing this. So here we go, here's our second coat. We've done the front and the back. Now let's do the front one more time. Make sure we get all the little nooks and crannies and, you know, the corners of the MOSFETs and the, you know, everything that you can. There's, you know, taller rectangular components that sometimes the corners don't exactly get hit the first time, so use that flashlight. Be real thorough, and you'll have, you know, good quality product when you're done. And here, I took the blue tack off because under the connector on these SpeedyBee flight controller and the ESC are little pads, so that if the connector breaks, you can solder onto that instead. So I'm using the Q-tip to get those pads. And now we're going to reinstall the grommets. I let it dry for 24 hours, by the way, so I didn't show that in the video, but I let it dry on a fan for 24 hours. And now we're going to reinstall everything into the frame, and we're almost done with the build here. As long as you don't put the grommets in backwards. Just kidding. You can just take them out and flip them around. There we go. Alright, let's put it in the frame. I didn't mention that I use zip ties a lot, but these little hyper tough zip ties from Walmart that are super colorful are super fun. I love them, and they're cheap, so grab yourself a bag if you don't have any. They come in super handy out in the field too. Now, at this stage in the build, you could put all 4 motor screws in each motor if you'd like, because we shouldn't need to take them back out. And I didn't mention this, but make sure you route your power cable prior to putting the flight controller onto the stack screws, because it won't fit otherwise, okay? I kind of figured that out the hard way, but I'm warning you now. Okay, we've got the stack mounted. Now the O3 is being plugged in, and we'll put the little cover back on there. And I'll need to remove the antenna, because to use the antenna backpack, you need the antenna separate to slide into the mount, and then you can reinstall it. So that's what I'm going to do here. Took a little, pressing with a screwdriver to try to get the lips of the antenna mount separated. It's kind of why I'm off camera here messing around with it, but there we go. You want to put that TPU ring on the antenna first, then put it into the mount, then reinstall it onto the DJI Air Unit. Alright, here we go. So grab your prop guards and your CNC heatsink, and that's what goes in first. So you'll need the 4 standoffs and the appropriate screws for them. You can see all that in the manual. I think it's the M3, I'm not sure, about like 8mm or something like that. There's a bunch of random lengths, so reference your manual for that. And you can put all 4 of those in, and also this little CNC plate. So those little tiny screws will hold that in, and we can move forward. So next you're supposed to put the air unit into position, and it's tight. Trying to figure out how to flip, the carbon fiber frame around and getting it all situated. Definitely tight, but there we go. Air unit's pretty close. I put the backpack on just to get it out of the way. Now let's get that air unit mount holder thing going on. It just screws right into the CNC plate. So once that's in, your air unit will be secure, and we can put the carbon fiber in the rest of the way. Make sure you put your antenna for your receiver where it needs to go, probably now. And then last but not least, your flight controller USB extender. And then have fun stuffing all the wires in. I'm really glad I didn't cut anything shorter than it needed to be, because as you can see, it's tight. So at this point, we'll put the camera dampeners into the camera plate, and I'll put the camera in. I installed this upside down. It's my first time using an air unit, so it's not a big deal to flip it around, but I didn't realize it until I booted everything up and then realized I needed to take it apart again for the 10th time and flip the camera around. Alright. So I noticed as I'm putting the camera plate in, I'll just talk to you about some problems I had, but I did notice that there was kind of like something in between the flight controller and the air unit. As you can see, it's kind of like wobbling and wiggling in there. So I had to do a lot of moving around with the wires and the receiver and trying to get that all figured out, how to fit in there the best way possible. I kind of just routed everything to the sides of the air unit, stuffed the receiver in the side, and then eventually I'm gonna use some friction tape and tape the O3 camera cable and the receiver wires and whatever else is kind of stray. I'm gonna just put one little piece of tape around to keep it all together. And I think this is the final move here. I think we got it. Almost. It's so hard to see in there, so that's what's giving me trouble, but we'll get it, we'll get it. I think I'm gonna put the camera mount on here pretty soon too, just so it hold everything together, but at this point the carbon fiber frame isn't rocking around anymore. It kind of pinches the receiver antenna, which I don't like that much, but maybe I can design a mount for that. So we'll put the camera, the GoPro adapter mount thing on here, and then we're almost done, which is wonderful. Starting to come together. Alright, make sure everything's nice and snug. Let's put the battery plate on and the battery strap. What's cool about this battery strap is you can route it, normally like this, or you can route it, front to back ways, so you can put your battery sideways. And then last but not least, I'm going to put the zip ties on and, make them all neat. And we'll plug into Betaflight and set up, all the electronics. So we're good, plugged in, no magic smoke, there's no smoke with the smoke stopper. Okay, we're good. Alright, let's hop into Betaflight here and set up this B35. Go to the Ports tab and select UART1 as Configuration MSP and select MSP plus DisplayPort for the VTX. And that will set up your Air unit. And go to UART2 and select Serial RX, and that will set up your receiver. Now let's move to the Configuration tab. You may need to mess with some of these settings if you're having trouble, but for now I'm going to leave it alone, and we'll worry about that tuning after I know that this thing can get up in the air. But yeah, the PID loop frequency and the gyro update frequency might need some adjustment. To flip the quad over, put 180 degrees in one of these boxes here. If you roll it 180 degrees, it won't point it in a different direction. I set my beacon tone to 5, I like that better, and only for RX set or for like the beacon. And then I don't need to touch anything else in here. Power and battery should be all set, but you can check it over just to be sure. Sometimes you might need to adjust some of this, but usually it's on the money. So if it looks good, looks like mine, then it's what came from the factory. Okay, so let's go to the presets tab here, and we want this OSD for FPV.WTF DJI O3 Avatar HD for the Air Unit OSD. So you can type, any of those keywords in HD OSD, and there it is. So you click it and select the drop down and find what UART you want the DisplayPort and MSP VTX on, which will be UART1. So click that and then select pick. And once you do that, it will open up your client and install it for you basically. So if we go to the PIDs, this is what I've downloaded. I will show you how to get the stock PIDs for the B35, but this is what came from the factory. So I'm not going to change this yet. I'll worry about tuning later. But go to the client, and then we'll open up another window here, browser, and what I'm going to have you search for is Oscar Liang B35 Pro. So I'm going to type that in right here, and he's got a ton of good information. This guy's awesome. So anyway, find this link here, and he reviews the B35 Pro, and click the How to Set Up page. And here is the client diff here from the stock B35. So here it is. I'm going to go down to Profile 0 and select that. I mean, realistically, you could probably do the whole thing if that's the stock diff, but I just kind of want the PIDs, so I don't need everything else, so we'll just grab profile 0, copy it, go back to Betaflight, and just paste it into the command line. And I'm not going to do that because I've already set this up, but paste it in, and if it doesn't start processing it, click enter and it will process it for you, and you can go back to the PIDs and check to make sure that that's good. So moving forward, we'll go to the receiver tab. We have serial via UART selected, which is what we want because we have an Express LRS receiver, and we want that on CRSF, Crossfire Protocol. And all this I left alone, so probably don't need to mess with it, but if your channel map's wrong, this is where you change that. These are the channels I have. I've got arm, angle, beeper, flip after crash, and pre-arm. I'll go over setting this up in another video, but this is what it looks like before you set anything up, and you click add range with your transmitter bound, and then you just click whatever switch you want, that bound to with auto selected, and it will automatically select that channel for you. It's awesome, very easy. Just make sure you bind your control or your transmitter first. And then let's hop into the motors tab here. So this was a little dicey for me because you got to change a few things. As you can see, I'm in props out configuration, and reversing it will show the props in configuration. I want it props out. Select DShot 300, and then ESC sensor should be on, and from the factory you guys can't enable bidirectional DShot on the SpeedyBee F405 mini stack. What I did was flash Blue Jay, and then I was able to turn on bidirectional DShot. I'm going to raise the idle a little bit because after flying this, I was having a couple issues. I did have a desync that I need to tune out, but I'm thinking that I can set up a dynamic idle or work, through that a little bit later. So I'm just going to raise the idle to 6 and save it, and we're back. So let's hop into the OSD tab, and here it is. Make sure you have HD selected. If it doesn't show an HD size monitor, click like auto PAL and then click back to HD, and it should fix it for you. Yeah, and then pick whatever elements you want on your OSD. My go-to are link quality and RSSI DBM. Those are very important. And I got the goggles information on here just because it's available, but I don't really need it. And then I've also got the battery information, like current draw and average cell voltage. And of course the warnings, I like that. So yeah, link quality, RSSI DBM, average cell voltage, and battery current draw. Okay, so this flight controller does have black box, and I'm going to use it for tuning here. I've never tuned a quad, from scratch, so we're going to see how that goes. But yeah, this is all set up. Make sure your transmitter's bound, and you've got your goggles, and put your props on, and you should be ready to rock. That is if you've got your motors all figured out. So I have the battery plugged in so we can spin the motors and figure all that out, and you should do the same on the bench just to make sure. And last but not least, I'll set up the rates. You can put, whatever rates you like, but I like actual rates, and obviously I'm typing in the wrong box here, but I typically do 900 degrees per second roll and pitch and 1000 degrees per second yaw. And then I'll adjust the expo to like 0.54, and the center sensitivity for this, I'll put it up 50. So you'll see how that changes the line, the curves and all that. I don't use a throttle curve typically. Maybe I should. If you think I should use a throttle curve, let me know. Tell me why. Alright, once we save this, we should be ready to go. And yeah, let's test fly this sucker. Thanks for watching. If you have anything to add, you want to comment, please like and subscribe. I will answer all your comments. I'll take anything you say into consideration if you'd like to see a different tutorial in the future. And if you would like to build your own quad, if you need parts for some of your quads, if you just want to go shopping, I am proud to say I'm newly affiliated with GetFPV. So thanks to GetFPV, I have an affiliate link in the description, and I would really appreciate your support just by clicking that link if you need to go shopping on there. And it gives me a little bit of a kickback. Plus I get to know that there's some engagement on these videos, and you know, I like to try to support you guys if possible, so let's make it mutual. Thanks for watching. This is Abnormal FPV. I'm out.